What's happening, party people? Welcome to your daily morning motivational message. It is Mental Tough Takeover Tuesday, and motivation is a lot like our personal hygiene. You got to do it every day in order to maintain a certain standard in your life. So, when it comes to your external presentation, we tend to do pretty good, right? We'll brush our teeth, we'll wash our face, we'll take showers and baths so that we're not, funky and we're not having bad breath. And those things are important, right? You only have one time to make a first impression. And think about it for your mind. Your mind is even more important, I would say, than the exterior because the inner root is going to bear the outer fruit. So I really want to encourage everyone, all of you, to be diligent in your consistency and taking care of yourself up here. Your mind, it's the most valuable tool, the greatest asset that you have. And I want you to be in control of your mind instead of your mind being in control of you. So the series this week is about transitioning from a 98%er to a 2%er. So I wanted to give you the foundational principles of 98% versus 2%. I gave you a little bit of a glimpse yesterday. So understanding that when you look at it, and the numbers are really interesting. So about 3% of the population this is a guesstimation, but it's pretty accurate, own a library card. So that means 97% don't. Well, library cards are free. So do you have a library card? Do you even use it? Why? Why don't we not value something that's free that can lead us to a vault of information that can unlock the secrets of massive success, that can expose us to stories and points of inspiration that can be guideposts for us in our journeys to build a successful life? Why don't we have library cards? Well, it's the same reason why 98% of the population, by the time they hit retirement, are going to be dead broke, dependent upon family, friends, of the government, or have to continue working to maintain their current lifestyle. 2%, just 2% are going to be rich and or financially fit. Now, those numbers might fluctuate. It might be 95% versus 5%. It might be 90% versus 10%, but it's not going to deviate that much. And you can look at the numbers in terms of the average income in America, which is $60,000 a year, $5,000 a month, in terms of how many people are living without debt, how many people are living with a net worth that they can live off of for at least 5 or more years. The numbers are going to bear themselves out. So in any room that you're in, it's always going to be a smaller percentage, single digits, that are in a situation where they are financially viable, where they can do what they want, when they want, with whom they want, as much as they want, without ever having to ask for permission. So understanding that's the foundational principle where it comes from. I cultivated this talk over the years, but I want to give you some very specific traits, and you're going to understand it, you're going to relate to it, and you'll understand the transitioning part. So here are some characteristics of being a 98 percenter. 98 percenters are notorious for making excuses. They're very good at making excuses. They're very good at self-deception. They will deceive themselves, which means they will easily deceive others. 98 percenters tend to lean into weakness. They're very weak and weak-minded. 98 percenters quit. They love to quit. They quit everything. They quit. They try something. It's hard. They quit. When things get difficult, they quit. They're always looking for a way out, an escape route. 98 percenters follow the wrong people instead of the right people. 98 percenters are not critical thinkers. 98 percenters have no vision whatsoever. 98 percenters are lazy. They're lazy in work ethic. They're lazy in learning. They're lazy, period. 98 percenters are notorious for being negative. They will always attach themselves to anything that's negative. They love to feed off negativity. 98 percenters are drama kings and drama queens. 98 percenters love to play the victim. They're not victors, they're victims. If they can blame anything or anyone else for this situation, they will. 98 percenters are haters. They hate on other people that are aspirational, other people that are successful, other people that are rich. They love to hate on other people. 98 percenters, they live in a very small world. They have very small minds and very, very small thinking. So these are some common traits of 98 percenters, okay? And when you look at the structure, they 98% seek security. By the way, they believe in the illusion of security. We all know there's no such thing. That's an illusion. Like there's no such thing as having a safe, secure job, because people that always think they have safe, secure jobs are the first ones to get laid off. That's an illusion. You might have some level of stability, you might have some level of consistency, but there's no such thing as security. Okay, but that's 98% thinking. All right, they seek comfort. They can't stand to be uncomfortable. So those are some of the characteristics. All right, I want to give you that firm visual with language. So that's a 98 percenter. How many of you all grew up in a home where some of those traits were prevalent? Were some of them, okay? Maybe not all of them, hopefully not, but a lot of us can relate to those traits showing up in our home. Deception, making excuses, laziness, following wrong, small thinking. That's not abnormal. Now let's talk about the 2%. So 2%ers are focused, right? 98%ers are easily distracted. 2%ers are focused. 2%ers have vision. They have mind sight because they understand their mind sight's greater than their eyesight. That's what we call vision. 98%ers live in fear. They make decisions based on fear. 2%ers make their decisions based on faith. It doesn't mean they don't have fear, it just means that fear doesn't control them. And so they move in a spirit of faith. 2%ers have extraordinary work ethic. They're exceptional workers. They're very, very, very hard workers. I'm talking whatever they're pursuing, whatever they're going after, they're going to give it everything they got. 2%ers have extreme effort. They know that they can out effort most anyone, because effort is not a personality trait. Effort is a question of the will. 2%ers follow the right people instead of the wrong people. 2%ers are willing to engage in rigorous honesty. So they're not into self-deception. They're going to be honest with themselves and with other people, because you have to be able to identify what the problem is. And what you don't acknowledge cannot change. So 2%ers are like, let's have some rigorous honesty. Let's be real with each other. Let's hold each other accountable. 2%ers don't make excuses. They make it happen. They make things happen. That's a 2% mindset, 2% trait. 2%ers are understanding that they have to be willing to take calculated risks. So they're not afraid to get uncomfortable. They know that the uncomfortable growth zone is where anything that's worthwhile is at. Like 2%ers know anytime that they've been uncomfortable, what comes right after that is some level of growth and learning, period. So they embrace that. So 2%ers have a way of moving through life that is courageous, that is determined, that is deliberate and directed, and they have a vision, and they're going to focus on that vision until that vision becomes manifest. So those are some very basic traits for you to understand, 98% versus 2%. And then the question becomes, well, if you grew up in a home, all right, because I understand some of you may have grown up in a home that was more 2% than 98%. God bless you. Most people didn't. That's why the average income is $60,000 a year. Like who would assign themselves, listen to me, who would assign themselves a worth of $5,000 a month? Like who would sign up for that and be okay with it? A 98%er. That's their mindset, their mentality. So the question becomes, how do I transition? Because if you grew up like most of us did in a more 98% than 2% household, you're going to have those traits that you're going to have to overcome. Meaning you're going to have to unlearn some things, some poor habits, some poor thinking. And then once you unlearn that, you replace them with a 2% mindset, a 2% track, okay? Because it's about your conviction, it's about your belief, it's about your faith, it's about your tenets, the principles and the value system that you cultivate that you're going to live from in order to create the life of your dreams and your desires. But it doesn't happen unless you're willing to make that transition. So if you grew up in a 98% household, I ask you, well, where are you right now? 98% versus 2% camp, where are you? People always hesitate a little bit because they're like, well, I want to be a 2%er, but honestly, if I'm being rigorously honest, Ed, I'm not there yet. That's why we call it transitioning from a 98%er to a 2%er, because we all have these flaws, if you will. We're subject to some of these poor habits in our life, and you have to recognize that in order to make the change. So that's the foundation. That's the basis of what we're going to be training from for the next 3 days in this series of transitioning from a 98%er to 2%er. And I'm certainly hoping that those of you that are tuning in, you want to make that transition. Okay, it's a process, but it's worth it. Transitioning from a 98%er to a 2%er, and we'll talk about the magic that that can bring in your life. If you've got some value, like and subscribe, pass it on, because it's a blessing to be a blessing.